P. Diddy leaves the Metropolitan Detention Center jail in Brooklyn. New reports say he was taken to the hospital for a few hours last week to get an MRI. We're just now learning about this, though, because Diddy was taken from the jail late at night.
P. Diddy left the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, and new reports reveal he was taken to a hospital for a few hours last week to get an MRI, news that only emerged now because he was moved from the jail late at night, shocking the world as details come from one of America's most notorious prisons, where Sean Diddy Combs, once a symbol of power, fame, and luxury, has faced health concerns just days after his sentencing, as apparently his knee has been bothering him recently.
So apparently Diddy's knee has been bothering him recently, so he reported it. At some point, it was decided that he needed medical care outside of the jail, so he was taken to a Brooklyn hospital. He was only gone for a couple of hours and came straight back to MDC after his MRI was finished. Diddy's attorney Mark Agnifilo told TMZ, quote, "I cannot comment on anything related to prisoner movements. Also, I'm not commenting on anything related to possible medical issues." A statement from the Federal Bureau of Prisons was released too. It says, quote, "For privacy, safety, and security reasons, we do not comment on the conditions of confinement for anyone in our custody, to include medical status or medical trips." Well, the Federal Bureau of Prisons may not be able to comment on all of this, but I do know someone who can. I'm going to bring in Dr. Dwayne Hendricks, a former corrections officer and deputy warden right there at MDC. Dwayne, thanks for coming on with us once again. You're a friend of the show and give us a great interview every time. And what I wanted to ask you about today is Diddy leaving MDC to go to the hospital. Is this a big undertaking?
Not necessarily. Only in the format that it happened with him leaving later in the evening. Typically, inmates are given a physical within the first 14 days of their arrival. And if there's anything that indicates that needs immediate follow-up, the medical team there will follow up immediately. However, if there's some procedures or some sort of medical processes they need to go through that are not available at the institution, or they can't bring someone in like a specialist to come in to perform that medical process at the institution, they will schedule medical trips on a monthly basis. And there's a review team that goes over those trips every month. And but this particular process was a little bit different because, as you know, most doctors' offices and most folks that do MRIs and x-rays and things of that nature, they're on a normal work schedule, between, the normal business hours of maybe 10 o'clock and maybe 6 p.m. So in that case, this was a little bit different, getting him outside the facility in the late evening hours to do just, possibly a basic MRI.
Yeah, I was thinking about the timeline too, because I don't ever recall going to the doctor at 10 p.m. at night. As you said, it's usually 9 to 5, 10 to 6 kind of vibes. But for P. Diddy, I can kind of understand why it was at 10 p.m. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking they decided to do this because he's such a high profile name that they wouldn't want to draw attention to it. I mean, this is an unassuming Thursday night around 10 p.m. Could that be why they decided then to go to the hospital?
Yes, and also, for a couple of reasons, staff, many correctional agencies are short-staffed. So when you're taking someone out with this high-profile person such as P. Diddy, just the nature of who he is going to cause a serious security concern, because you're going to need to be able to stave off, onlookers, fans, media, and the like. And then you also got to think about the security of the hospital and their operations. People there to try to get better. You have families there to visit their loved ones. And the last thing you need is somewhat, a chaotic environment that's causing concern with security. And also, most people don't know this, but he's actually under the primary custody. He's a what we call a U.S. Marshals inmate because he's on pretrial status. So the Bureau, the agency, the Bureau of Prisons, oversees, the operations with overseeing the inmates on a day-to-day basis. However, when they're in the hospital for an extended period of time, if there's no deal worked out between the local institution and the local marshal's office, it would be the marshal's responsibility to take custody of that particular inmate. So, but back to your original question, yes, he is definitely taken out at that time. And I'm sure this arrangement was made weeks in advance to make sure that
The man who once ruled the charts, commanded the attention of millions, and walked through life surrounded by security, cameras, and adoration is now facing the harsh, unfiltered reality of prison life. A world nothing like the one he knew. As witnesses report chaos erupting behind bars with Diddy for the first time in his life, seen in tears. And those close to the situation say it happened suddenly with no warnings, no signs, and no time to react. One moment, he was adjusting to the grim rhythm of prison, and the next violence broke out around him, the air thick with tension and danger, in a place where power equals survival, leaving him cornered, overwhelmed, and struck. With his fame offering no protection, as the mogul who once built empires and sat at the top of the entertainment world, struggled just to stay on his feet, the attack reportedly leaving him shaken to his core. A man who had lived his life in control, commanding rooms, people, and the spotlight, now confronted with something entirely beyond his control. While guards rushed in and chaos filled the corridors, shouts echoing off concrete walls.
technician or that clinician was going to be available to take a look at whatever issues that he may be experiencing right now. So that way, there's not a whole lot of onlookers. And then even with staff and other inmates, it gives them not an opportunity to make a call, to their family. Hey, I think, Diddy's going out to the hospital right now. If anybody wants to take a look at him, head out there. And then I think the other thing, Sierra, is since there are no cameras in the courthouse throughout this process, we've only been getting the sketch artist views of their perspective of what he looks like. And I think people have been talking about him losing weight and different things of that nature. So I know folks will probably want to be able to get a photo of him to see what he actually looks like. And and if he does have issues with his legs, is he walking with a limp? Does he have does he have a cane or anything like that? So yeah, I think that would be the reason why that they would make this, take this measure, which I've never seen in my career. Someone taken out to the hospital at this time of night for something as basic as an MRI.
Oh, that's interesting that this is the first time you've ever seen anything like this, because there have been high-profile inmates at MDC in the past, maybe not to the level of P. Diddy. You had a lot of answers in that one answer, so many different roads I could go down, and I agree with you 100%. People would want that photo. We would be talking about that photo today if for some reason we got it. So that's a super valid point. I wanted to go back to the very beginning though, because how does all of this start? Does P. Diddy go to one of the corrections officers and say, hey, my knee's really bothering me, I'm not feeling well? Would he go to an infirmary on site? What would the early process look like?
So again, after that initial review of his current medical situation during his physical, and then there's follow-up to that process if there's something found, immediately. But, you have to understand, daily, there are medical staff walking through the units, doing what we call sit call and asking inmates, are they okay? And then you have folks that are walking around passing out meds and different things of that nature. And then he can also reach out to the medical team by what we call an inmate to staff correspondence form, whether electronically or in writing. And he can say, hey, I'm having, I've had chronic issues with my knee for several years. And I'm saying there's reports that after he ran the New York City Marathon in 2003, that he had some ongoing issues with one of his knees. So that's how that initial process would start. And then if it's nothing like emergent, because again, if his knee was bothering him to the point where he fell out or something like that in the evening, then obviously they would take him to the hospital right away. It wouldn't be a thing where they would schedule that out. But in terms of something that basic, that would have to be looked at well in advance, and then they would make that appointment and then reach out to the hospital staff and say, hey, can you get someone that can, one, keep their mouth shut, that's going to be on schedule to work overtime or switch their schedule to do this particular procedure? Can they keep their mouth shut and not expose that, hey, we're going to bring him out into the community for a couple of hours to do this process? So there had to be some high level planning not just at the local institution and the local hospital, but obviously probably at the regional office level and maybe even at the DOJ level, saying that, hey, this individual is going to be going out for a short period of time to make sure that they're taking care of these issues that he may or may not be having with his knee.
Yeah, the planning into all of this, based on what you're saying, does sound like...
His face, showing a mix of fear, disbelief, and pain, was led away, and those who saw it said the look in his eyes told the whole story, because this was no longer the Diddy the world knew. The confidence, ego, and carefully crafted image all stripped away, replaced by raw terror and desperation. And now, as news of the attack spreads, the entertainment world reels, asking how one of hip-hop's most successful, celebrated, and influential figures ended up in such a dangerous, degrading position, with the fall from power swift, brutal, and public. The man who once symbolized success and dominance, now reduced to tears behind bars. Every new headline and leak from inside the prison painting an ever more tragic picture, and sources close to his legal team say he is struggling to cope with the harsh reality of his new life, as the prison environment is nothing like what he's used to. Cold, merciless, governed by rules he cannot bend. And with money offering no protection, because at the end of the...
It's a jail. People in that jail are being held, they're presumed innocent, and there's responsibility, since the person's not free to do what they want, to protect them and to make sure that they're mentally stable and that they're protected.
Inside those walls, he is just another inmate, and the weight of that truth is crushing him, as he is reportedly isolated, fearful, and constantly looking over his shoulder. And after the latest attack, his lawyers are said to be preparing an urgent appeal, arguing that his safety is at risk, that he cannot survive in the general population, and that he must be transferred or released. But the system does not bend easily, with the same judge who handed down his sentence unlikely to show sympathy. And while the world outside buzzes with every update, inside the rules are different, and Diddy is learning painfully and publicly that no amount of power can protect him from the consequences of his actions. With the brutal attack, according to some reports, possibly intended as a message, a reminder that in prison, everyone is equal and fame means nothing, leaving fans divided, some horrified by the reality he now faces.
That's something that's very difficult to really answer, because we're not doing the interviews of the inmate. The inmate gets an evaluation when they come in. They get checked for their health, their physical health, as well as their mental health. And that's where those sort of decisions are made. It's not just sort of something because it's P. Diddy, we're putting him in. They have to have some sort of facts to substantiate that.
Others are less sympathetic, arguing that karma has finally caught up with him, and that this is the reality he created through years of unchecked behavior. As social media erupts with debates, trending hashtags, and theories about who was behind the attack and whether it was random or orchestrated, with every opinion, rumor, and detail adding fuel to a fire, showing no sign of burning out. And inside his cell, Diddy is said to be a different man, the bravado gone, the charm, laughter, and self-assured confidence that once defined him replaced by silence, fear, and reflection. With some insiders claiming he cries at night, unable to sleep, haunted by memories of the world he once ruled and terrified by the one he is trapped in now, while reaching out to his lawyers daily, desperate for updates and any sign this nightmare might end. And for someone who once prided himself on being unstoppable, untouchable, and unbreakable, this marks the end of an illusion, as Diddy's reality has become one of constant fear and uncertainty.
That's a very difficult question. I think because of if I was his attorney, I would want to make sure that he was being kept in a place where he's safe and not be used as some sort of way that some inmate may want to just move their street credibility, for lack of a better term, by just saying, yeah, I went after P. Diddy because, he wasn't supposed to be doing those things and all that. So it's a very difficult situation when someone that famous and well known in this kind of case is put into general population. So it's going to be a major concern for the institution that is holding them.
Fans may still remember the music, the empire, and the parties. But inside, none of that matters, because survival is now the only goal. And even that seems uncertain. With the industry watching closely, every artist, producer, and executive who once stood beside him remaining silent. Partnerships gone, endorsements vanished, and the empire dismantled, leaving a man stripped of everything: wealth, power, status, forced to confront himself in the harshest environment imaginable, as the same energy that built him up is gone, replaced by the haunting reality that he may never rebuild. And as the investigation into the attack continues, one question hangs heavy. Will he make it out alive? With his lawyers insisting that if he is not moved to safer conditions, his life remains in grave danger. The attack already proving his vulnerability, and without changes, it may only be a matter of time before something worse occurs.
A year ago, that he got the key to the city here in New York. And now here he is indicted in the Southern District, right? So what happened in a year for someone to have fallen so far?
But what led up to these serious federal charges? We're talking to criminal defense attorney Adam Conta to break down the timeline leading up to Diddy's arrest. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. Now, starting off from where we're at right now, Diddy faces 3 federal charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. So how did we get here? We have to head back to the 1990s, when Diddy first rose to fame after creating the record label Bad Boy Records that represented artists like the notorious B.I.G. or Biggie Smalls. It was during this time frame that Diddy allegedly sexually assaulted multiple women in New York. We first learned about these allegations in November of last year, when Joy Dickerson-Neal and Liza Gardner filed separate civil suits against Diddy. Gardner says her assault happened back in 1990 when she met Diddy at a work event. She alleges he raped her and later choked her to the point that she passed out. The next year, in 1991, Joy Dickerson-Neal says Diddy raped her while she was a student at Syracuse University. She says Diddy even recorded this alleged sexual assault and passed the tape around to other people. So these things allegedly happened in the early 90s, but they're not made public then. As the years pass by, Diddy's career just keeps on gaining steam. By the late 90s, Diddy himself begins putting out songs, even snagging his first 2 Grammys in 1998. But the following year marks the next stop.
As the threat of something worse loomed, and Diddy's team scrambled to push for an emergency transfer or early release, the internet erupted with speculation. Some claiming the attack was revenge from people he had wronged in the industry. Others saying it was gang-related, and a few suggesting that word had spread inside the prison about his high-profile connections and rumored secrets, making him a target. But whatever the reason, one thing was clear: Diddy's time behind bars had become a nightmare. The man who once lived surrounded by luxury, now fearing for his life every single day. With fans split between sympathy and claims of karma, and celebrities weighing in with prayers or remaining silent, while the industry that once celebrated him watched from a distance, unsure how to react. As inside his isolation cell, Diddy sat on his bunk staring at the concrete wall, the swelling on his face gone but bruises still fresh, a constant reminder of how far he had fallen. No longer in control, no longer calling the shots. Just another prisoner trying to survive, with days turning into weeks and fear never leaving, guards rotating constantly, meals delivered separately, and even the smallest noise making him jump. The attack stripping away the last bit of pride he had left, and when his lawyer returned, Diddy didn't speak at first, only staring blankly before whispering, "I'm not going to make it in here," as his lawyer promised to do everything possible to get him transferred to a safer facility. But Diddy knew deep down that no amount of lawyering could erase the mark he now carried. The man who once lived above the world, now trapped in constant fear. The legend of Sean Diddy Combs no longer written on platinum records, but in bruises, sleepless nights, and echoes of a prison that had swallowed him whole, while the world watched, every whisper, report, and leaked detail, feeding the same tragic narrative. Diddy, once the king of an empire, is now a prisoner of his own fate, with tears, pleas, and attacks serving as a brutal reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, is above consequence. And from mansions to prison yards, from platinum plaques to steel bars, the story of Sean Diddy Combs has become a cautionary tale of how the empire you build can turn into the cage that traps you, leaving the man who once made the world dance to face the music of his own making.
Up on the Diddy timeline, the New York nightclub shooting. 3 people were shot, though no one suffered any life-threatening injuries. Diddy, the rapper Shine, and a man named Jamal Barrow were all arrested, and so was Diddy's then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez. J-Lo's charges were dropped, but both Diddy and Shine went to trial. Diddy was acquitted, but Shine was convicted on charges of attempted murder and criminal possession of a weapon. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Now, in recent months, there's been allegations that Shine took the fall for Diddy, and on top of that he forced J-Lo to carry an illegal weapon. All this leads us into the new millennium, though. A woman, only identified as Jane Doe, says Diddy raped her in 2003 when she was just 17. In the lawsuit she filed last year, she included pictures of herself at Diddy's recording studio in New York. From there, we fast forward to late 2005 or 2006, when Diddy met Cassandra Ventura, who would later be known publicly as the singer Cassie. According to Cassie's lawsuit, she started working with Diddy when she was just 19 years old, and he was 37. She says Diddy began, quote, almost immediately asserting possession and control over her, and inserting himself into all aspects of her career and her personal life. That includes things like forcing Cassie to use illegal drugs and have sex with prostitutes as Diddy watched or masturbated. She also alleges he recorded many of these interactions. The next stop on the Diddy timeline is 2011, when Cassie had a brief flirtatious relationship with rapper Kid Cudi. She says that in 2012, Diddy told her that he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car and that he wanted to ensure that Kid Cudi was home with his friends when it happened. Around that time, Kid Cudi's car exploded in his driveway. From there, we have to hop to September 2022, when Rodney Jones, also known as Lil Rod, began working with Diddy. For the next year and a half, Lil Rod alleges he suffered abuse, all at the hands of Diddy himself. At times, Lil Rod says Diddy touched his private areas without consent and forced Lil Rod to watch him shower or have naked body massages. Lil Rod says Diddy, quote, attempted to groom Mr. Jones into engaging in gay sex. Then, in 2023, Cassie filed a lawsuit against Diddy under the New York Survivors Act, meaning a sexual assault survivor could file civil suit against their alleged abuser regardless of the statute of limitations. So Cassie filed that suit on November 16th of last year, and though it was settled just one day later, the damage was already done. Before the year's end, Diddy also faced lawsuits from Liza Gardner, Joy Dickerson-Neal, and Jane Doe. After this, Hulu dropped plans for a reality show called Diddy +7 that was supposed to be about the singer and his family. At the same time, other major brands that he had worked with over the years severed ties. That brings us to February 26, 2024, when Lil Rod filed his lawsuit. Just about a month later, on March 25th, federal investigators raided 2 of Diddy's homes in both Los Angeles and Miami. The same day, Diddy's alleged drug mule, Brendan Paul, was arrested at the Miami airport. He was charged with cocaine and marijuana possession, but avoided any jail time with a plea deal that required him to enter a drug diversion program. That moves us to April 4th, when Diddy is named a co-defendant in yet another civil lawsuit, this time involving the sexual assault of a woman on a yacht. Diddy's son, Christian, or King Combs, is also listed in the suit. Over the next few weeks, Diddy then files motions to dismiss several of the civil lawsuits against him, but he makes news once again on May 17th when CNN releases shocking surveillance video showing Diddy brutally attack Cassie in a hotel hallway. 2 days later, on May 19th, Diddy posted this to his Instagram.
I was f***ed up. I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that